Hey everybody, it's John Pollock alongside John Ramdeen and Robin Black. One final discussion for the UFC's card coming up this weekend in Melbourne, Australia. If you're in Canada, the prelims will be airing here Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, because even when they go to Australia, guys, the Australians just must hate us in North America because they still tailor it to our time zone and not inconveniencing us as they wake up Sunday morning to go watch fights.
Yeah, it's strange because I'm not tuning in to see this at our particular time. I'll probably wait till the next day because really when I look at this card, yeah, you have your main event, but the rest of the card is just, So I'll, if somebody says there's a great fight I need to see, I'm going to tune in. But that's what happens when you don't load the card. You have UFC 205 just went down, even UFC 206 in Toronto, UFC 207. I know it's a fight night card, but you lose Jacare and you lose Luke Rockhold. I mean,
I do like this main event though.
Sure.
So you got to watch this main event, and for just the fight. For the fight itself. Do these guys sort of rock your world with Twitter nonsense? No, and I'm glad, because these are great.
He's not Robert Whittaker.
Yeah. No, I'm not having that. I'm not accepting that one. I will not accept that one. Robert Whittaker is the interesting dynamic of this fight for me. Is Whittaker likes to kick from the outside, and then a lot of people, as I kick you, you'll close distance after you take that kick or the kick misses, and that's a perfect strategy for Brunson. Brunson's only fought like 7.5 minutes in his last 4 fights, and all of them have been a guy unconscious with the knuckles of this hand. So that will be the goal. But Whittaker plays a bait and switch with you. He kicks, and as he retracts, he's ready to fire with the hands as he invites you in. That dynamic will be a challenge for Brunson, and this is a really great fight. This is a beautiful fight. People who like martial arts, like combat, will love this fight.
Robert Whittaker, to me, it's like his counter-striking, it's proven very difficult for a number of fighters to figure out. And Derek Brunson, I mean, he came over from Strikeforce. We all knew the wrestling that he had. But it's his striking game, John, that's truly, to me, put him into that upper echelon at 185 pounds. And with the one loss he's had in the UFC, that was to Yoel Romero in a fight that I don't look at that as a complete negative. This was a guy that was able to take Yoel Romero, a silver medalist in wrestling, down. I think that Derek Brunson, to me, both of these guys are kind of the forgotten two at 185 pounds, and that's just a fact of how many contenders they have at 185. But Derek Brunson, I feel, may even have the leg up over Robert Whittaker of what a win can do for him in that division.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, though, you need to get this win. If you're Derek Brunson, he's the bigger name, so to speak. So he has to go out, and if he wants to get a crack at the 185-pound title, he's got to look very, very good in this fight. The reason why I do like Brunson is because he is the full package. He seems to be able to play his game. And I think even though both guys are on a run, I still appreciate Whittaker's journey to where he is at this point opposed to Brunson. Now, again, Brunson's very, very talented, but I just feel that Whittaker, if these two happen to get into the fire, that Whittaker he's going to be the guy that will be able to get out of it unscathed.
There was once a time in fighting where, before everyone had figured everything out, when the wrestler would say, I'll just take this guy down, and the striker would be like, screw that, on his way in, I'm going to hit him and knock him out. And over time, people got better at slipping punches and stuff. But this kind of, Brunson has turned into one of these guys. If he hits you, he knocks you out. He generates force really, really well. Some of these wrestlers convert their ability to use their hips and their core into ability to throw punches. And I love watching the guy fight, and I can't wait for this fight. But if he's Brunson and I'm Whittaker at the long distance, Whittaker will have the first weapon. So Brunson must close the distance, and Whittaker's kicking game is really, really, really strong and really on point. So Brunson has to pass through that to get his knuckles to him or to get to his hips, and that's where Whittaker is going to try to take advantage. Outside, piece him up with the kicks, and try to move away on angles, and get this guy coming in. But if he gets in and he lands his left hand on you, you are in a lot of trouble.
Do you run the risk, though, if you're Brunson, you're throwing those long-range weapons for Brunson? If Whittaker's throwing those, if you're Brunson and you're trying to catch them, put them down that way?
Yeah, this is something you and I have talked about a lot on 5 Rounds today, and we'll continue to. The idea of where the game evolves to. If you think of anything as an absolute, a limiting absolute, you're screwed. You're screwed. And one of those is, I can't kick a wrestler. You can kick a wrestler. You just have to address the fact that he can catch it and penalize him for that thing. Take that threat and make it your advantage. Conor McGregor kicks wrestlers all the time, and he extracts that kick. Front kick, you see they catch them, and he extracts it. It's an old Thai technique that he's adapted with that sort of Taekwondo approach. There's answers, and you find the answers, and you penalize him for catching. That's where the game is going.
One final thought just on Melbourne while we talk about it, because I think there's an interesting parallel to a market we know much better, and that is Canada, where they finally got into the province of Ontario and ran UFC 129. It was a massive stadium event, and a guy in Tom Wright that helped spearhead both getting into Melbourne and into Ontario. And the first event, huge success last year in Melbourne, almost filling the stadium with Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm, 56,000 people. Now they come back with this event. They unfortunately had some bad luck losing their main event. But do you get the sense that when you go into a big market like that with such a giant show, the expectations are raised? Because I saw that firsthand here in Toronto, where they came back a number of months later. It was at the Air Canada Centre, John Jones and Lyoto Machida, but it was still, you were coming off a massive Rogers Centre card, and your expectation level is very high for a card. And as you mentioned, this is not a deep show.
Yeah, and that's, I think, and people get spoiled. You know, you have the biggest star in Melbourne in Ronda Rousey, the passing of the torch. So you have two big stars, just like the UFC 129 in Toronto. You have George
and in New York. I mean, they just got 205.
Exactly.
Now you're coming back to Brooklyn.
They got to come out big.
Their comparison is going to be what Madison Square Garden had 4 months earlier.
Yeah,
I don't know what else you can do, though. I mean, you could purposefully, in the music business in the old day, you'd put your second best song out first, so that you could come back with the big hit. But then over time, it was like, you might not get a second song unless you come out with the big hit. And I think that's what they have to do. You got to come out and you got to destroy. If the best problem you have, or the worst problem you have, is it was so good it's hard to live up to, that's a problem most people
But aren't you trying to sell tickets?
It's tough.
Melbourne, for example, this is the main event. You have Brunson and Whittaker. How many people are buying tickets for that main event? As you pointed out, it's a great fight, but none of these guys really garnered that much interest in the grand scheme of things. So if you're just a casual fan looking for big stars and they don't have it, are you going to come back when the UFC comes back?
Whittaker's from that area of the world, so I hope that he performs well and the audience likes him. And Brunson is a stud. So I like the fight. I hope people go see it. But you bring up a thought that somehow I haven't crossed yet, and that is, this is our backyard. We're the experts in Toronto. Do we know how that one's selling? Have we heard? Because UFC 206 in Toronto is coming up, and we better get to the root of how this is done.
I would expect, though, initially that ticket sales would have been down because it's like, oh, well, George St. Pierre isn't on this card. But then you have Max Holloway and Anthony Pettis put on the card. You have the light heavyweight championship. You have Cowboy Cerrone on the card
now.
So because of that, I would expect the tickets will certainly pick up at the end, because this is not like this fight night card in Australia.
We'll do some digging and see what we can get to next week on that.
There you go. And hey, for Melbourne, never underestimate the drawing power of Dan Kelly.
Exactly.
Who will be headlining the prelims, 8 Eastern, here on Fight Network in Canada, leading into Robert Whittaker and Derek Brunson headlining the main card in Melbourne.